A college student from the United States vanishes on the beaches of the Dominican Republic while on spring break with friends. What we know about the last time she was seen, what may have happened to this 20-year-old girl now missing in the Caribbean. We are following a story that has been developing fast out of the Dominican Republic. It is a country where thousands of college students and young people go every year for spring break to escape college for a little bit, to go blow off some steam. But right now, authorities from the Dominican Republic as well as the United States are searching for a missing college student. This is 20-year-old Sudiksha Konanki. She is a student at the University of Pittsburgh, and this is the missing person poster that authorities in the DR put out for her. Now, here's what the rescue efforts to find her have looked like since she was last seen Thursday, March 6th in the early hours of the morning. This is video of Dominican authorities using helicopters to search the beach where she was last seen. So let's break down the timeline of what we know as far as when she went missing. According to local media outlets in the Dominican Republic, Konanki was last seen on the beach around 4:15 in the morning on Thursday with a group of friends at the Rio Republica Resort in Punta Cana. Now, this is an all-inclusive kind of place, one that is very popular with spring break college students. Its website advertises deals like $90 a night for all you can eat and drink 24 hours a day with access, as you see in these pictures, to the beach. Local police tell CNN that around 5:55 a.m. on Thursday, 5 women and 1 man are seen leaving the beach on surveillance video. Konanki was not one of those people. The outlet reports that she is believed to have stayed behind with the young man. Now, at the time of this reporting, that is the last time anyone had heard or seen the 20-year-old girl. Konanki is, again, 20 years old. She is an Indian citizen, but a permanent resident of the United States, and she resides in Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. The local sheriff's office in Virginia put out a release saying that they are working with Dominican authorities on this search. Konanki's dad spoke to CNN from the Dominican Republic and said that his daughter arrived in the Caribbean nation on Monday last week for spring break, and she was planning to study pre-med when she returned to the University of Pittsburgh in hopes of one day having a career in medicine. Now, her dad, again, now in the Dominican Republic, said authorities have told him that they have searched the area of the beach where she was last seen multiple times. And here are more images from Dominican authorities of that search. So now we've gotten to the part of the story where anonymous media reports can make it difficult to try and put a timeline together and to understand exactly what the authorities think happened at this point. According to CNN, the young man who reportedly stayed behind with Konanki was last seen leaving the beach at 9:55 in the morning alone, which is roughly 4 hours after that larger group of people left around 6 a.m., leaving Konanki and this young man behind. And per CNN, Konanki's friends alerted the authorities that she was missing around 4 p.m. Thursday, which is 12 hours after she went missing. Now, that young man, who was last seen leaving the beach at 9:55 in the morning, was interviewed by Dominican authorities, and it's unclear the story he gave, but police, according to CNN, are still trying to corroborate it. Then you have what ABC News is saying, with their sources telling them in Punta Cana that they believe Konanki at this point died of drowning. Their sources are telling them that Konanki and this young man went for a swim before the sun came up when it was still dark out, when they were left behind, and then Konanki was caught up by a big wave and drowned. ABC says their police sources say that friends who were seen with Konanki, they were all interviewed by authorities and have not been charged. You obviously can't imagine what the family of this young girl is going through right now. Her dad has spoken to multiple media outlets. He's in the Dominican Republic trying to help with the search, trying to find his daughter. And it doesn't appear that her family at this point is ready to go with the theory that she drowned. Her father told WTOP in Washington, D.C. that he believes that if she had drowned, that her body would have washed up on the shore at some point over the 4 days that she's been missing. He's calling on Dominican authorities to investigate other possibilities like foul play, including kidnapping or abduction. WTOP does cite a police complaint which reportedly reads, quote, "While it is possible that Sudiksha drowned, there is growing suspicion that there may be a crime, specifically the possibility of kidnapping." It also says the name of someone that Konanki's family calls a, quote, stranger, who who is that person who was left behind with her on the beach. We don't know that person's name as of yet, what his connection may be to this young college student who's missing. Konanki's dad says that he also finds it suspicious that she would leave her phone and wallet with her friends because he says she always had her phone on her. Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I want to thank our sponsor, Upside. Upside's a free app that you can download, and it gives you cash back for when you buy everyday essentials like gas or groceries. I use Upside whenever I fill up my tank. You can see video of me using it here. Actually, the first time I used Upside, it was at a gas station about 4 minutes from my house, filled up my tank. I got roughly $7 cash back. So here's how it works. You download Upside, you select some of the offerings that it has. You can use it as a gas station, at a convenience store. If you go out to eat, there are offers to use Upside. You'll pay using your debit or credit card, just like you typically would. Then that cash back shows up in your Upside app. Then you transfer it straight to your bank account. And again, this is real money you can use. So I want you to download Upside for free. You can scan the QR code on your screen, or there's a link to download Upside in the description of this video. And on top of that, use promo code OTC. That will give you an extra 25 cents off per gallon when you fill up your first tank of gas using Upside. Joining me now to talk about this search and this investigation is Colin Schmidt, retired special agent with the FBI and founder of Finaware Software. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know this has been a fast developing story over the weekend, and then now here we are at the start of the week. What stands out to you at this point as everyone's trying to figure out what happened to this young girl?
Well, it seems very similar to the Holloway investigation that happened many years ago, where it was a spring breaker, went out, had an interaction with either a local or another male, and then disappears. So the most important thing here to focus on is the timeline, and that'll be the challenge for the investigators to fill in every single second of that timeline to determine, obviously, where she is and what happened to her.
And everything at this point we're getting is through different media reports, and there's not a lot of official statements that have been made by Dominican authorities. And before we get into that timeline, as somebody who worked with the FBI, how do these investigations play out where Dominican authorities are, the ones that appear to be leading it, but then you have federal and state agencies in the United States trying to figure out what happened? Who takes the lead as this goes on, as far as where this investigation goes?
Well, the first thing is, obviously, Dominican Republic is a sovereign country, so they are the ones who control the investigation. And if this, I believe that some of the reporting is that this young lady is a U.S. citizen, therefore the FBI would have the primary jurisdiction of any U.S. law enforcement. So in a case like this, I believe the Miami field office handles all the Caribbean nations. And so there is an agent that is assigned to several countries down there, and there might even be one in the Dominican Republic called an assistant legal attaché, and that's the FBI's representative to a foreign country. And then they work with the State Department. And in this case, if there is a request for assistance, it would go through the State Department to the FBI, and then that agent, that ALAT FBI agent, would reach out to Miami, and they would send down resources to assist the Dominican authorities to do the investigation. But to answer your question, the Dominican authorities would take the lead on a case like this.
Because what does that assistance, because we always hear, and I know even she was from Loudoun County, Virginia, and the sheriff's office there said that they're trying to assist any way they can. Like, what does that assistance actually look like in these types of investigations?
Well, there's a couple of different ways of looking at it. Is the assistance on the ground in Dominican Republic, and then the assistance in the local area where she came from. So the sheriff's department might be going out and interviewing people to find out if she had any contact with any of her friends and family locally. And then in the Dominican Republic, the Dominican authorities may not have access to higher level investigative tools like the ability to exploit cell phones, to do things with video, or to look at surveillance video or other electronic capturing of the evidence to assist them in kind of exploiting what's on there.
We don't know at this point what more the authorities know, but from what's been reported, this timeline where she was at the beach 4:15, 4:50 in the morning. She stays behind with what's been described as a young man. We don't know who he is, what his background is. Her dad had said that she had just met him, so it wasn't. It appears at this point to be a close friend. It stood out to me that he doesn't leave the beach until about 10 o'clock the next day, or later that morning, about 5 hours later. If you're one of the investigators involved here, how suspicious is that? Because I just think of the sun comes up at like 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's not even a case if you say you fell asleep on the beach that you woke up and then you went to go find help. It just seems really suspicious.
Well, it comes down to the attribution of where that information came from, that he was on
Yeah.
the beach till 10 a.m. So the first thing, if that's his statement, then that needs to be corroborated. So that's done with his own cell phone, taking a look at it, or talk to the people that were around there, or if there's other people on the beach. Because at 10 a.m. in a resort area, you're going to have lots and lots of traffic. I mean, it's going to
Right.
be packed. So to say that he was there till 10 a.m., you're going to have lots of witnesses that are going to be able to confirm or state that's not the case. So basically what they're going to do is, if that is his statement, they're going to take it, break it apart, and try to corroborate everything in there. And then when they find those uh, statements that are apparently untrue, then that's where they start to dig in and try to get to the truth.
It'll be, once his identity comes forward, he certainly hasn't been charged with anything at this point, and maybe just a friend, maybe, who knows what happened. One storyline that's been brought out, a theory, was that she drowned and she went for a swim before the sun came up, which is always dangerous. Rip currents can be really dangerous. That a wave got her, pulled her out to the ocean, and she drowned. If there's no video, let's just say this person comes back and says, that's what happened, and there's no video to corroborate that, and her body's not recovered. I mean, how do authorities go about trying to figure out whether that would actually happen?
Well, it's going to come down to statements that he's made or activities he's made independent of her. So the cell phone, if he's made any statements to any friends or coworkers, and if there's any other people who had observed them together, if this person is indeed involved. So
Right.
it's going to take some classic gumshoe work, where they're just going to have to go out there and talk to lots and lots of people to find out what really happened and fill out that timeline. And in a case like this, your biggest enemy is time. The longer it takes to do any of these things, the more likely evidence is going to disappear, and the truth is not going to be found.
I know her dad has said that he, through media reports, is not ready to accept the theory that she may have drowned, and they want an expanded investigation to look into something like perhaps a kidnapping or abduction. What's the process of that happening if maybe the Dominican authorities do believe that the drowning theory is the one that they want to go with?
Well, likely he's going to want the FBI to get involved and to work with the Dominican authorities. And once again, that's a process that goes through the State Department, and they interact with the Dominican authorities to get invited in for the FBI agents to be on the ground to conduct an investigation. And I think what he's looking for is, he wants more resources put towards this, because there is too many pieces of this puzzle that just don't seem to line up.
Yeah, it's another thing too, and in your experience, it was reported that she wasn't reported missing until later that day, like 4 p.m. on Thursday, which is roughly 12 hours from the last time she went missing. Maybe it was a case where friends didn't want to make it more than what it was and that she hadn't come back. Does that stand out to you if you were investigating this, that it just took such a long time for it seems, at least on the outside, for her to be reported missing?
Well, any investigation comes down to critical thinking skills, and you look at it from a perspective, it's like, okay, if my friend was missing I expected her back at 8 a.m. and she wasn't back at 8 a.m., I would perhaps look for an hour and then I would report her missing. That's what I would do. So you have to I
Yeah.
wasn't there, so we don't know what the circumstances are. And the other thing that would go is, who reported her missing and why. And then, of course, why was there such a large gap in time? And there might be an explanation to that, but then it comes right back around to burning a little shoe leather and talking to all of those people and all those friends to find out what is the real timeline and why did it take so long to report her missing.
As an investigator, if you could take us inside the interrogation, the interview room, and if you have someone sitting across from you and being like, I don't know what happened, or we went for a swim and a wave took her, and that's the story that I'm going to go in and tell investigators. What's the follow-up question? What's the next step to try to figure out what happened beyond, as you peel that onion back beyond just the initial statement that someone gives in a case like this?
Well, if you're going in to interrogate somebody or ask them admission seeking questions, generally speaking, you want to already know the answer to the questions you're going to ask. And then at that point, if he starts to be evasive, then you're going to look at his body language. And then you want to have some sort of lever to get him to come up with what really happened. And that's why you only ask, generally, if you can, only ask questions you already know the answer to. So with somebody like this, it depends on if he has a lot of experience with law enforcement where he's been questioned for criminal activity, then he might be a harder nut to crack. But if he's just a college kid and the investigators are experienced, I'm confident they'll be able to get the truth from him.
Looking at she was last seen on a beach, and just from investigations you've done, what are some of the challenges of the geography that investigators are dealing with?
Well, it comes down to weather and wind. And so, if they were looking for any evidence of her being there in terms of walking or whatever or clothing or stuff like that, you're dealing with sand, you're dealing with wind, you're dealing with water, and you're dealing with lots of people that are probably in a potential crime scene walking through it. So that's why it becomes very, very important. The time aspect of this is get the resources there and do the investigation and backtrack where she last was in the event that you can find something that would link her to where or what really happened.
I'm going to put you on the spot here with this question too. So if you don't have an answer to it, I totally get it. But her dad had mentioned that he believes at this point, and I can't imagine what he's going through, without a doubt, but he believes at this point that her body would have washed ashore over the 4 days she went missing, had she been had she drowned, had a wave taken her. I don't know what the conditions are in the Dominican Republic right now, and what the rip currents look like, but um, how likely is it that if a body gets taken by a wave, that it actually would come back to shore, as opposed to kind of being lost at sea forever, even if it was from a shoreline?
Well, it's less likely than if it was dumped outside in a field, because in a field you're just dealing with animals and wind and rain. But when you dump something in water, you add three or four more variables to it. You deal with
Right.
more predators, you deal with current, and you deal with the fact that it could be going anywhere. So I can't really answer that question because you just don't know the topography and the environment that it potentially could have gone into. And frankly, if there were predators in the water or it's known for predators, there's a high likelihood that it may not have washed ashore, unlike in the United States if it was in a river or a lake where there's very few predators. So I hold out hope that she didn't drown and she's still alive. But to hold out hope that the body should have washed ashore, it's somewhat unlikely, but anything's possible.
Well, and I imagine too, to some of those variables you're talking about, with and I know this is kind of where the morbid conversation goes, but unfortunately, in these types of cases, when someone goes missing, the conversation goes there. But the time that investigators would have to recover a body, if it's in water, how does that impact that timeline?
Well, it's like I said, if you have a body outside, you don't have the water that's amplifying, depending on the temperature of the water, the decomposition, as well as the water is going to move the body. So if you dump the body in a field, unless there's a hurricane or a tornado, it's not going to move. But if it's in water, there's a high probability that it's not going to be the place where it was so-called dumped, or if she drowned. So that's why the water adds a infinite challenges to the investigators to find that body. And frankly, being in the ocean versus a lake, it makes it even more complicated because you have that wave action and currents and riptides to caused that body to be moved to away from a place where she may have entered the water.
And again, we don't know if foul play happened here. We don't know what unfortunately happened to this young 20-year-old girl at this point. But for you and your years of investigating, I know you bring up the name Natalee Holloway, and it just makes you think back to that story and the attention that it got. I guess at this point, based off the evidence that's been put forward, and we don't know what happened, for you as an investigator, I mean, how suspicious does this seem to you? I guess, what does your gut tell you at this point, just in the early stages of since she's been missing?
Well, the one thing I don't know from the reporting is her level of intoxication, and that would also go to the outcome of whether she wandered off with somebody or she was in fact drunk and she drowned because of her level of intoxication. So I'm not really at a point to comment on what really happened, because simply stated, there's so much more here, and the investigators have a lot of work to do to start putting the puzzle pieces together.
And typically in a timeline, I know she went missing on Thursday, and it's probably in the movies you hear the first 48 and all of those types of things. I mean, what stage in that timeline would you say that we're in at this point, now that it's been more than 4 days that she's missing?
Well, there has been studies on probability of finding not only a body but a live person, and obviously after the first 48, it does go down dramatically. But anything's possible, especially in a country like the Dominican Republic. Hopefully, she's still alive, and I hold that hope. I think there's still early enough in the timeline that there is a possibility that she's still alive, but comes right back to the broken record I keep saying is the investigators got to get down there and start digging and digging. Yep. and finding out, because the evidence is going to start disappearing faster than they can even get their arms around it if they're not there in front of it.
Yeah, I'm holding out hope too. It's certainly a scary story. You think of her family and what they're going through as well, and hopefully there will be a happy resolution to all of this. Colin Schmidt, retired FBI special agent, thank you for joining us and giving your expertise. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to keep a close eye on this story as it continues to develop in the Caribbean. For On the Case, presented by Law&Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.